Few war films have ever felt as painfully real and emotionally raw as Platoon. It wasn't just a movie. It was Oliver Stone's personal journey through the chaos of Vietnam, a story carved from his own scars and nightmares. Unlike typical Hollywood war flicks that polished heroism and victory, Platoon embraced the confusion, exhaustion, and moral strain of combat. Behind the camera, the cast didn't just act, they survived. Every day in the Philippine jungle tested their endurance, blurring the line between performance and lived experience, and giving audiences a glimpse of the true horror and humanity of war. It all began with Oliver Stone himself. Before becoming a filmmaker, he had served as an infantryman in Vietnam between 1967 and 1968, fighting with the 25th Infantry Division and later the 1st Cavalry Division. Twice wounded, he earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. These experiences left him haunted by memories of fear, fatigue, and survival. Memories that would shape every scene of Platoon. The characters of Sergeant Elias and Sergeant Barnes were drawn from real men he had known, one protective and compassionate, the other cold and imposing. Writing the script became Stone's personal way of confronting his trauma, and by 1971, just a few years after returning from war, the screenplay was already taking shape. Every firefight, every desperate glance on screen carried the echoes of his own experiences, giving the film a chilling authenticity that no fiction could ever replicate. Stone's journey to get the movie made was almost as epic as the story itself. Early drafts of the script even reached Jim Morrison, the legendary singer of The Doors, whom Stone had hoped to cast as Chris Taylor. Morrison never replied, and shortly after, he passed away in Paris. The script was left in limbo, ignored by most of Hollywood for years. Yet Stone refused to let it die. Over nearly a decade, studios repeatedly rejected his vision, dismissing it as too grim and commercially unappealing. They urged him to rewrite it into a conventional action thriller where Vietnam was just a backdrop for heroics. But Stone held firm, determined to show the chaos and moral ambiguity he had lived through. That persistence would become one of the movie's defining traits. When funding finally came, it wasn't from a major studio but from Hemdale, a small independent company willing to take a risk. The budget was just $6 million. Tiny by 1980 standards. Every dollar mattered. Stone and his crew improvised relentlessly, shooting in the Philippine jungle with natural light, guerrilla-style setups, and practical effects. Handheld cameras and real locations replaced elaborate Hollywood sets. Even helicopters, which became iconic in the film, were borrowed from the Philippine military. Limitations became strengths, and the film's raw, immediate texture emerged from necessity. Without Pentagon support, the team had to get creative. Uniforms, vehicles, and equipment were sourced unconventionally. Soldiers from the Philippine Army stood in as extras. This independence allowed Stone to depict the conflict without interference, preserving the moral complexity and chaos of war. And as if the conditions weren't intense enough, filming coincided with the 1986 Philippine Revolution. Tanks rolled through Manila streets, political unrest swirled, and real gunfire sometimes echoed near the set. The boundary between fiction and reality blurred, amplifying the tension and urgency of every scene. Preparation for the cast was brutal. Vietnam veteran Dale Dye ran a punishing 2-week boot camp, forcing the actors to dig foxholes, live on rations, and endure surprise night ambushes in sweltering heat. Charlie Sheen, in particular, was deliberately confused and isolated to mirror Chris Taylor's disorientation. By the time cameras rolled, the actors weren't just performing soldiers. They had lived their exhaustion, fear, and camaraderie. Dye even appeared briefly on screen as Captain Harris, ensuring that every movement, every tactical choice, reflected real military behavior. Platoon was filmed chronologically, a rare choice that allowed the cast to experience the emotional and physical toll of the story as it unfolded. Weeks in the oppressive jungle left them exhausted and disheveled, and that fatigue translated directly into the film. Real insects, relentless rain, mud, and tropical diseases became part of the performance. Helmets were personalized with doodles, slogans, and tributes, making each soldier feel like a living, breathing character. Rainstorms and sudden weather changes forced scenes to adapt spontaneously, resulting in a documentary-like realism that couldn't have been achieved otherwise. Some moments in the film were rooted directly in Stone's personal trauma. The opening ambush reflected a night where he had been wounded in both the neck and foot. Charlie Sheen's disoriented performance captured the panic and shock of those memories. The death of Sergeant Elias, running through the jungle with helicopters overhead, was captured in a single take, creating an image of desperation and beauty that would become one of cinema's most iconic. Even small choices like playing Merle Haggard's Oki from Muskogee out of historical order were deliberate, chosen for emotional resonance rather than strict accuracy. Casting twists shaped the film as well. Charlie Sheen became Chris Taylor after Elio Estevez dropped out, leading to a career-defining performance. Other potential stars like Keanu Reeves, Mickey Rourke, and Kevin Costner had declined roles, paving the way for Sheen, Willem Dafoe, and Tom Berenger to create unforgettable characters. Stone even appeared briefly on screen as a battalion commander, reconnecting with his personal experience and symbolically embedding himself within the story he had lived. When Platoon finally hit theaters, the response was surreal for Stone. After 15 years of struggle, the film became a cultural phenomenon. Lines formed outside theaters, critics debated its raw honesty, and audiences were moved by a story that was intensely personal yet universally resonant. On a modest $6 million budget, it grossed over $138 million worldwide, proving that deeply human, morally complex films could captivate viewers and redefine an entire genre. Platoon was more than a war movie. It was Oliver Stone's testimony, a cinematic reckoning, and a lasting masterpiece that forever changed how audiences view the reality of combat.